All right. So once more, a very warm welcome to all of you who have joined today for this discussion. We're going to have a very interesting discussion on a topic that I'm sure got many of you curious, many of you interested, and that's why you have joined here today. We thank you for taking out time on a weekday to join this discussion, and I can fairly assure you that by the end of this discussion, you will go back with a lot of new ideas, with a lot of new concepts, with a lot of insight as to what's happening in this world and what's going to happen. With the new introduction with the introduction of artificial intelligence in the mainstream today. So let me first take a minute to introduce to you the very esteemed speaker for today, Manish Choksi. So 1 minute, let me just spotlight him. Well, it's not allowing me to add him as a spotlight, but yeah, Manish, can you just try to unmute yourself?
It's okay.
Okay, and can you turn on your video? Manish, can you just turn on your video?
I can't.
Is it allowing to do that?
It's not allowing me to do that.
Let me just check. Let me just check. Yeah, you should be able to do it now.
Yep.
Great. So apologies, as in, true to form, all technology webinars start with some glitch or the other. So my apologies for that. And thank you once more to all the participants who have joined. As I said, our esteemed speaker for today's discussion is Manish Choksi. He's the non-executive vice chairman of Asian Paints Limited. We all know Asian Paints, one of the most well-managed, professionally managed and fastest growing companies in India today. He's been associated with them in various capacities over the years, in different functions like strategy, IT, supply chain, HR, and so on and so forth. He's also serving on the boards of various companies and startups in the position of an independent director. He is also an angel investor, and most of all, he is one of the foremost experts and exponents of technology and its impact on business. And it's definitely a privilege to have him amongst us here today. And he will be talking to us about this topic about what are the next frontiers in digital for enterprises, AI, and beyond. So welcome to the discussion, Manish, and thanks a lot for taking out time for us today.
Thank you, Siddharth, for the opportunity to share the thoughts, views, opinions. Hoping that we have a good conversation and a lot of what we discuss can be used by our listeners today to be able to build their digital and AI strategies.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Manish. So let's just dive in straight away. A quick note to the audience. We have disabled chat. We will enable it after some time. Towards the end, we'll also allow you to raise hands and ask questions. So for the time being, just hold your horses. Let's have Manish speaking to us about this topic. So I'll dive right in. Manish, first question for you. There's been a wave, okay, over the last couple of years, of this going digital. Even from 10x TD, we have been running this series of going digital, variety of topics in digital. With several companies taking these digital initiatives in areas like customer sales, service, or in supply chain, or some of them have done it in manufacturing operations, etc. So, do you think that the enterprises in India have actually leveraged the power of digital right now as we stand, or is there still some way to go?
So I would say that just like any technology that comes along or any platform that comes along, digital as a broad theme sort of came on the horizon maybe a decade ago. 4 or 5 years back, it sort of was mainstream. And just like anything that goes from frontier technology to mainstream, different companies in India would be at different levels of engagement and different levels of successfully being able to, I would say, transform their businesses by use of digital technology in areas that you said, across that. So I would say that different companies would have, based on their business strategies, use digital as a means of transforming different parts of their company. And I think if you were to go around the table and look at maybe the top 400-500 companies in India, pretty much each and every one of them would count at least I think 4 or 5 digital initiatives that they would assume would be reasonably successful. I think the numbers of companies where the entire business would have got transformed would be far fewer. And I think that's got to do with, in some sense, them participating in certain sectors, them viewing their customers in a particular way, and them viewing customer and then their supply chains in a particular manner. So take, for example, if you were a direct to consumer company, building, let's say, consumer products or building textile and retail products, I think you would have got completely disrupted by the use of digital technology. And if you were not, and you were not disrupting yourself, you'd be pretty much out of business, considering the plethora of startups, both small and large, that have come in that space. So I would say that at one extreme is companies like that, which are retail direct to consumer. The next set of companies would be financial services. I think these are two sectors which have got completely disrupted with sort of embedding of digital technology. And I would feel that those companies that are in that space and are reasonably successful in either defending their positions or increasing their consumer engagement or increasing their profitability, their size, I think they would have had successful initiatives. I think when you look at companies that are extremely industrial, manufacturing oriented, maybe they would have used digital technologies very differently. And it's a lot harder to embed digital technology in manufacturing on account of the sizable investments you need to make to retrofit a manufacturing plant, etc., as well as the change management you have to do on the shop floor. Maybe those companies would seem to be laggards in terms of investment. So I would assume that if we were to plot every company, you would have a spectrum across it. I would say that if you were to have an X and Y axis of relevance versus penetration, you would see financial sector and consumer companies on the upper right-hand quadrant, and maybe industrial B2B enterprises on the bottom, the extreme left bottom quadrant in that sense of word, and then a whole bunch of companies in between.
Very interesting. So Manish, if you look at it from the perspective of these companies that have already deployed various digital initiatives, right? Like you said, the fintech or the financial services companies or banks, they would have deployed it to a larger extent, or the consumer goods companies would have deployed to a larger extent, and maybe the industrial manufacturing companies on a little lesser extent. Now, for those who have deployed various digital initiatives, they could be standalone or they could be even integrated, right? We don't know. So what do you see that's coming next for them now that maybe somebody's done something on the customer side, something on the supplier side, something in the plant, something related to employees? Various processes have been digitalized. What do you see coming next?
So I think what I see coming next is companies taking a more holistic view of this. Take, for example, any company that has got any consumer engagement strategy, especially if you're going to the end consumer marketplace, building a branded enterprise in some sense. I see them use digital technologies for consumer engagement and customer journeys pretty much universally. Some may be, more evolved and more successful. Others might be learning from them and, playing catch up. But you pretty much will see companies doing all of that. And I would say that, and making sure that you have not only implement the first wave of digital technology, but utilize that experience of that first wave to completely re-engineer your process based on the current availability of digital technology, such that you remove waste, you remove maybe some of the older vestiges that you may have carried on. And maybe in the first wave, you've not had enough energy put in to be able to revamp it. I would urge those companies to go back and almost refashion it as digital 2.0 or digital 3.0, depending on the company, re-looking at the processes. The next sort of things that companies could do is saying that I have done very well on the front-end technology side of it. Can I ensure that I plug that success on the front end to, let's say, the back end? So revamping and reshaping the digital and fulfillment, not only on a standalone basis, but on an integrated basis, which means what you landed up doing on re-engineering process on digital technology, you now do by stitching the technology across the company, such that the transparency, visibility, as well as the sort of customer engagement with a direct visibility on how they are going to see the company is available across the value chain in some sense. And the companies would also tend to utilize this wave to engage with their partners and ecosystem partners such as dealers, distributors, make sure that they are part of this, such that you truly see a transformation at the end consumer end in some sense. So I think that's, clearly the next wave where you will see deepening of how digital technology will work with certain processes and how you can change them, and also widening of the use of digital technology by making it a more integrated way.
Got it. Makes sense. Just one side question on this, Manish, that, a lot of companies have, typically digital initiatives have been taken by, a lot of the business folks themselves. They interact with some fancy vendor who comes and sells them a story around digital, and a lot of standalone initiatives which are not integrated with each other. Now, when actually you, like you said, in the version 2 or 3, you actually start looking at re-engineering the whole business, actually orchestrating a process that cuts through multiple functional areas starts becoming a challenge, because there are so many non-integrated digital initiatives that are being taken. What is your experience on how to handle that, how to avoid that situation? And if we have it, how do you handle it?
So that is like no different than, when you used to use an ERP to re-engineer the company, or when you used, internet-like technologies to sort of take IT across to the extended supply chain. I think the quantum of impact and the ease of technology in the digital arena that we right now live in, and the fact that there are so many standards, makes it relatively easier to integrate standalone initiatives into company-wide initiatives.
Okay.
Earlier, the technologies were so sort of distinctly in silos that it became like a project in itself to do that integration. Whereas with the current set of technology paradigms, it is a lot easier to talk about integrating even disparate digital initiatives and marrying them in some sense. Albeit, I would agree that if you completely don't redesign, you would still leave maybe 20-30% waste. But I think 70% is far better than 30% to begin with, which is what you would have with an fragmented non-company-wide initiative.
Correct. No, I think that's a very practical answer. Now let's come to one of the hot topics, right? We are talking about
But so that
artificial. Yeah,
just want to
yeah.
add something on that. That I
Sure,
think
sure, sure. Please. Yeah.
I think management, CEOs, CDOs, CIOs need to recognize that indeed, and in not only recognize but also accept that they have a bunch of fragmented initiatives, and that they think that integrating them into making them fit together would indeed be sort of beneficial, would have a beneficial impact on, let's say, the delivery for the end consumer, or decrease the cost, etc. Now, if they don't come onto that common platform, it's going to be a lot harder to integrate that. And I would pretty much think that the next generation of technology that will come, if you are not having an integrated company looking and having a very sort of seamless, transparent view of it, it's going to be less and less possible for you to take advantage of what is going to come in the future.
Makes sense. So, talking about the future, Manish, the hot topic today, right? I mean, this artificial intelligence. Of course, it's been around for a while, but maybe with the introduction of ChatGPT, and I have another question on that, so I won't get into that right now. At a general level, how do you see the introduction of artificial intelligence into mainstream IT? How do you see it changing the game for businesses, for enterprises?
So I think when we went from standalone IT systems in different departments to an ERP, there was sort of a leap of what we saw as waste that got removed from the system. And then when you saw digital, the integration with the end consumer or with your vendors and partners, that became a lot easier. So I think you took efficiency to another level. When you look at artificial intelligence as a generic set of things, let's not talk about only chat GPT based or something like that, or generative AI alone. Yeah. But if you look at AI as a broader spectrum of things, I think embedding some amount of machine learning stroke artificial intelligence into various processes that are already interconnected is going to allow, I would say, not only companies, but almost platforms to perform or to be able to understand where the waste is and what they probably need to do to actually remove them in some sense of word. So even in stage one, you're going to see a lot of people drive efficiency using artificial intelligence in the first wave of applications. Obviously, the bleeding edge of ideas will tend to look at how I can get newer customers quicker, better, faster, and giving me a larger sort of share of their wallet out there. But for most of the people and for the mainstream, I think people are going to look at artificial intelligence as being able to look at how efficiently I'm working, making it more efficient by pointing out flaws, and then in some sense of the word, in stage one, helping the humans that run the processes do them faster and less error prone without extensive training. So if you have an organization that was running, let's say, service support, with a lot of people, the first stage you would say, hey, you know what, I need to know where my bottlenecks are and what I can do to fix them. The next stage in that avatar will be, can I learn what the most successful of my agents or my people are doing? And can I impart that learning to others very quickly by a guided step? And the third stage is, pretty much doing things that human beings couldn't do. So I think people will go through this avatar. I think there will be the bleeding few who will say that chat GPT or generative AI technologies can actually be used for generating new business or increasing the wallet share. Those are more difficult problems because there is obviously the reason to create, I would say, trust or enough experience in AI so that you are able to allow AI to be able to drive some of those decisions. Otherwise, you could get contra decisions also as a risk factor.
Yeah, that's something a lot of people would be worried about, because it's only going to be as intelligent as you set it up to
Yeah,
be.
but I'm saying in
You know.
stage one, when you look at that stage 1, 2, 3,
Hmm,
that is probably doable today at
got it.
a reasonable price in some sense of the word.
Got it. So, if I were to kind of break the cookie here, right? So, if you look at business, there are different functions, right? There is finance, there is manufacturing, there is HR, there is sales, marketing, distribution, so on and so forth. So, which business functions do you feel will be affected most by artificial intelligence, right? I mean, there is a lot of rumor mongering that is going on, and it's been going on for centuries. In one sense, whenever there was a wave of technological innovation, there have been people say, "Oh, there will be a mass loss of jobs," and so on and so forth. But if I take out the jobs part at the moment, we'll get back to it. But in terms of sheer increase in productivity, like you gave an example that this can help them to be more productive. So, which functional areas do you see being most affected by artificial intelligence?
So I would say generic word I would use for all these for functions that would get most disrupted and easiest, even with today's avatar of technologies, is service and support. Okay,
Okay.
these functions typically tend to do the same things already with a coded or a guided queue manager coming from several CRM or service software support. When you embed artificial intelligence, many of the low-level tasks don't even need to be done by the humans. Many of the mid-level tasks, the humans could be aided by artificial intelligence, almost prompting the answer. And I think that would increase the overall capacity to begin with, in terms of these people being able to do it. And I think it would also allow probably multi-channel capability to be replicated. So if I was coming on a voice call using AI technology, I could easily jump to another channel and probably carry that conversation on much easier than maybe in the past. So I think service and support would be probably get disrupted the most. What will get least disrupted would be, to begin with, is discovery, which means discovering new drugs, new products, etc., etc. Though I think artificial intelligence has a means to aid in making that whole discovery process faster. So per se, discovery will still require a lot of human mindset, but the human would get aided with a lot more data, a lot more information to be able to make better decisions in as we speak in technology today. What would be least disrupted would be probably be places where human life is at risk. That is a place where, if you're in that sort of business, so if you're a doctor, I see artificial intelligence aid you in making diagnostic to begin with. Replacement is probably maybe many years away.
Got it. Now, with the introduction of something like a Chat GPT, right? And I mean, every second article or post that one sees on LinkedIn nowadays, it is the hot topic, right? So talks about different prompts that you can write. Oh, this is just the beginning of Chat GPT, and then there are similar AI applications for generating images, for generating legal documents, what have you, right? So with the kind of breadth of areas and significant depth as well, you can't really write off the depth of information that's coming out of a Chat GPT like application. uh, how do you see this disrupting businesses today, and how can businesses actually use it to their advantage to create business, to start business, or to sustain and grow a business? What's your thought on
So,
that?
so let's look at generative technology in its nascent form, which is what ChatGPT is. It's a type of generative artificial intelligence. You talked about an example of generating images. Now, somebody would say that generating images is all about being able to only do different things, but assume that you're a company that wants to go from selling only products in India to selling products in maybe 50 countries which are talking in 22 languages. Generative AI has the capability to be able to generate all these new images in these new countries with a lot more, not only the translation bit being taken care of, which anyway was possible, but also being able to put maybe other contexts, let's say colors that are liked in that region, or the mode of conversation that you would have in that region also having an impact on that. So there is a lot more human touch on day one that generative AI has a capability of doing, as you're seeing in Chat GPT, that is able to understand a lot more of our human behavior in a particular way and is being able to embed it. So I would say that any place where at a low level you want to do many things without having to visit or interact with those people, generative AI is an automatic means to be able to do it. So let's take an example in a business closer to home. If I want to know how consumers would behave in a particular context, generative AI technology has a capability to give me a lot more learning with I would say significantly reduced expense, just because you are able to process so much of data quickly. The trick obviously lies in training the model and being able to keep the model updated with the right amount of compute power. So I would think that earlier the AI solutions were looking at patterns and doing this. Now you are almost getting to the level of context, and maybe I'm saying the feelings part of it is away, but otherwise everything is going to be part of artificial intelligence run tools.
Wow, and that's a scary scenario in one sense, because I remember having heard this story in my childhood about these three guys who are experts, right? They're walking through a jungle, they see the carcass of a tiger. One guy says, I'm expert in putting bones together, so he creates the skeleton. The second guy says, there are four of them. The second guy says that I'm expert in adding the flesh and flesh and organs, so he does that, and there's like a full tiger there standing in front of them. The third guy says, I know how to breathe life into it. So the fourth guy says, hey guy, hang on, right? It's a tiger. He says, boss, you're just envious because you don't know anything, right? And he goes and puts life into the tiger, and the tiger promptly kills all three of them and eats them up. And the fourth guy, who was wise, he ran away from the scene. So, with the introduction of something like artificial intelligence, we are creating something which, has tremendous capacity, right? But are we creating a tiger that will ultimately consume us, consume the hand which created it? Just any thought on that?
But so that the thought is very simple. You cannot stop progress, right? Just like those three people, two people told the third person that, look, if you better not do it because you'll be eaten alive. The third person decided to do it. So now you got to, as in business, unfortunately, you've got to decide, are you going to be the tiger or you want to be eaten by the tiger in some sense? So if you don't use either digital technology or artificial enabled digital technology to sort of transform your business, somebody else will probably create a business from the scratch and disrupt the business, in which case you die as sort of a decayed, you die of decay rather than being swallowed up by the tiger in some sense. So I think you got to choose your future well, whether you want to hunt or whether you want to just be a laissez-faire person and have a slow decay, or whether you want to become the one that will be hunted for in some sense of the word. So
I think that's a brilliant answer. Just little bit double clicking on this, right? I mean, sense that with you said that you did speak about the fact that things which are like low level, maybe L1, L2 kind of tasks in the support industry are going to be, probably taken away by something like a Chat GPT. How do you see this impacting the IT industry as a whole, and employees of the IT industry? What do they need to do to pivot, in this kind of a scenario?
So, I mean, so that let's not say that it's going to be here and now. I mean, this is obviously an, a way to embed things in some sense of the word. So it'll take some time for itself to play itself out. And like I said, IT companies of today and IT employees of today have only sort of two or three choices. One is learn the new technology, improve your ability to embed it with the human process so that you can even produce greater output and thus continue to remain relevant in the world. Okay. And then the people and somebody will go as far that someday you just won't have L1, L2 being done by people. Maybe that's true in some sense of word. So I think if you are a company in the IT world, I would say that start experimenting early so you know that you've begun the journey and that you have the ability to control the pace of embedding this technology depending on the success you have and the cost at which it comes. Okay. For the employees of the company, it is extremely important to, I think, look at the skills that they have got and start to build on the same so that they still remain relevant in the world where L1, L2 will remain artificial intelligence and aided in some sense of the word, if not completely controlled by artificial intelligence. So that's the way I would do it. And for consumers, I think, or end consumer companies that are going to be users of these technologies, I would say that look at what artificial intelligence and along with digital technology has to offer and start to see how you can improve your business's ability to service their consumers. Because I think one of the biggest things that is going to be driving this wave of initiatives, unlike any other in the past, all of the other past initiatives in technology for a company were sort of inward out, in to out, where the inner company transformed itself and thus gave a better output to the consumers. I think with artificial intelligence and digital put together, you have the unique combination where consumers could drive companies to behave in a very different manner in some sense of word. And that's okay. Beginning this journey early is fairly critical for a lot of companies.
Got it. One last question before we open up. Incidentally, we have just opened up the chat. So if anyone has any questions, you can start putting them on the chat window. So this to the audience. So Manish, in this scenario where everything is, kind of revolving and rotating around us, right? The technology world is like swirling around us. What do you see that will not change? I mean, there'll be some things that remain the same, some fundamentals of business that will remain the same, while technology, which is a contextual thing, will keep changing. So what do you see which is, likely to be fairly stable?
So stable is a context in some sense of the word. For many people, what is stable is for others very fast changing. But I would say that what will remain is the basic people involved in the enterprise, right? You have consumers. You have either met needs of consumers or unmet needs of consumers. Then you have a business and the ecosystem of the business that's trying to meet these unmet needs or being able to deliver the met needs in a very different, more efficient manner. I think that fundamental premise is probably not going to change in some sense. So the fact that you need to look for means to service a consumer and means to produce the product at a cheaper price, those kind of things won't change. What will change is how you are able to do it. So it's kind of like a motherhood question that won't change. Everything else will change.
Got it. So what do you see finally? I mean, the final point is what's beyond, what's coming in the future? What is it that you see is going to happen in the future from a technology standpoint?
I'm saying that you have to live in this brave world which says that, look, technology will probably create. I mean, none of us thought that we would get food delivered home a few years ago at a reasonably cost-effective rate. And then, COVID happened and we saw that accelerate even more. I'm saying that digital technologies and embedding digital technologies was difficult. If you were to look at the end point of artificial intelligence, somebody should be able to tell me that, using artificial intelligence, I would be able to get a roadmap of how to implement digital and AI technologies for my company. So I would say that, in the future, it would not be far away for AI technologies to predict what your consumers would need in the future. And I think that's really the future. So predict what the consumer already needs today. That's probably today. But in the future, you would be able to predict how things would evolve so that your end consumer's evolution, you can predict even before it happens.
Lovely.
Kind of like the Inception movie in some sense.
Yes. So I think that's in one sense the holy grail, right? Being able to predict the future based on what's happening right now. So I think that we can end that discussion on that note. Thanks a lot, Manish. There are a lot of questions that have come up. I'll just take one question that has come from Mukesh Kriplani, CEO at Parekh Plast India. So he's asked a question which is related to careers actually. So what should people entering a career chain now choose? Should they stick to their computer engineering jobs or select other branches and move away from CSE, or select AI specific jobs and courses?
Maybe somebody better than me would be better suited at answering this, but I'll give it a shot. I would say that the one thing digital and AI technologies give is probably an equal right to win. Earlier in the past, in the past, when you looked at when you looked at the workforce, it was all engineering MBAs and stuff like that. Today, people from various fields have a reason to exist in some sense of the word. And I think the IT world is proving that the more diverse the background the team of companies come from, the better is the chance that you are able to understand what your consumers want. So I would say that the deepening of this allows you to choose virtually any career as long as you remain digitally native in some sense. So be a doctor, but be aware that robotic surgery will happen someday and you will have to contend with being a technical specialist to be able to do that. I was at the eye doctor the other day and he was examining my retina and he was trying to tell me as to the patterns that he was looking at and why the computer was today, or AI embedded in that platform, was not able to predict those patterns and say that my eye is okay or not okay to some degree.
Wow.
And he was recognizing those patterns out there. So in the future, maybe that computer, I could do a self-serve of all the diagnostic tools, generate the report, go to the doctor and say, now interpret this for me.
Wow. Okay. So another question that's coming on chat: organizations which are MSME area, what are the suggestions for going ahead with digital? Small company, IT budget is not very great.
So I mean, so that one thing, yeah, I agree. IT budgets are not very great, but one of the things that happened before digital technology, which is the whole world of SaaS and cloud computing, made sure, and earlier SaaS made sure that you could have access to software and software platforms in a pay-per-use manner, which means as your organization grows, you can continue to grow with that platform and pay for it in a certain way. I think cloud computing brought the same level of what shall you say, democratization to compute platforms in some sense. And the digital technology has taken all of both these things on steroid of sorts and drastically reduced the cost of both of these. So I would say that a smaller company is better placed to use digital technologies than ever before. Secondly, I think a lot of the disruption that has been brought about by smaller companies has also led to the fact that they recognize that not all the users are in large companies, and they are willing to work with much smaller companies and have programs and technology that is far more nimble than what was in the future, which allowed only the privileged few that are a large IT workforce or could hire large technicians and contractors, IT contractors, to be able to implement. I think the era of digital technology allows, in embedding some of these technologies with far lesser external help, or with very, very specialized forces rather than with large teams. So I would say, all in all, we live in a world which is far more democratic, and even though you may have a small budget, you should be able to do significant number of things.
Great. Next question is from Tausif Jamal. Are there any specific government policies or regulations in India that focus on ethical AI practices and data privacy?
Data privacy, yes, but obviously it comes from the yesteryear's world of digital, in some sense of the word. I don't think the current data privacy bill, which is being discussed, addresses data privacy in the artificial intelligence world. But I think we do have the beginning of a fairly decent framework on data privacy, IT management. AI practices, I think its embedding itself is so early in the game that having a regulator much before you are able to see benefits is, in my opinion, a really bad thing, because they will curb the amount of innovation and exploration that will happen early on. So I would love to see a little more exploration, a little more innovation happen before people start to look at policing where AI can be used. On the flip side, I do recommend maybe a self-governing code of ethics to be put in place by practicing organization, obviously aided and embedded by some of the larger technology companies today. So maybe in the way that AI is self-governing and learns by itself, in similarly, maybe you could have governance initiatives also on a self-learning method, which are self-governed, rather than having the government organizations to take sometimes a very narrow microscopic view of the future, and then embed controls that tend to only sort of hinder innovation rather than help innovation.
Okay, that's an interesting thought. Thanks for that. Okay, there's a comment or a request actually from Hardik Parmar, okay, founder of Palm Tech. We work on P-commerce, meaning present commerce or live commerce. We got appreciation from IIT Mumbai and Ahmedabad. Special mentorship from PM Narendra Modi. I want to get mentorship for last mile.
Yeah. You can get my contact details from Siddharth or Ramesh and DM me.
Yeah. He wants mentorship. Okay. Then there's a question from CA Vikram Seth. So, hi Siddharth and Manish, great session. With AI, I feel that it will reach SMEs pretty fast, and that they may in fact adopt it faster than the large enterprises due to their agile footprint. What are your thoughts on this?
That's why I just mentioned that in the way SaaS, cloud computing, digital technologies, and artificial intelligence have grown, and with the fact that there are a lot more, what shall you say, small disruptive players thinking about these technologies, I think they will experiment with a lot many more SMEs. I think the only advice to SMEs would be that they need to learn to be experimented. And in most of the SMEs, it's not going to be a CIO or CTO who has to be experimental, but really the business owner, either the owner or the business leaders itself will have to be fairly, driven by what they can do with these technologies that will actually change this. So I would say that what used to work in the earlier world is even true today, that business owners and the actual owners of the companies will have to be, what shall you say, digitally aware of how technology can be harnessed to improve their companies.
Got it. I'll now open up for questions. If anybody has any questions, because the chat questions are done. Anyone has any questions that they'd like to ask by speaking up, you can just raise your hand and ask. Okay, there's a question, one more question that's come. Akbar Shah Muhammad. I would like to know whether AI will impact supply chain and reduce cost of inventory.
I would say that just like you had supply chain software in the yesteryears, and people like all the IT vendors came and told you that there was an in-memory model. That was the word that was used in the past. I think just look at in-memory. and say that there is almost a very, very large memory available. And the advantage you have got with artificial intelligence like algorithm is that the compute can be run in an in-memory mode for a much larger problem set. And with constructs that are both mathematical and non-mathematical in the same model. That has obviously the ability to be completely disruptive on things like supply chain. So I would say the short answer is yes. The tougher answer is how to construct these problems so that the answer actually gives you, what shall you say, self-learning impact in some way, which means you pose the problem to the artificial intelligence way where its compute gives you an answer and your implementation of that answer allows the engine to learn. I think that's going to be the critical thing if you want to do this on an ongoing basis.
Which is where probably the new set of jobs also will start coming in, where you have the ability to understand what capability AI brings and help formulate the right questions and then get answers.
Siddharth, there's one piece of industry which I think is going to get disrupted if it is not already getting disrupted. Is the education world. The fact that we go to college for 10, maybe 4 years, we study something, then we implement it when we come to jobs. I think that whole cycle and engine can get very, very disrupted because I think the democratization of learning is going to happen a lot faster in this era.
Got it. And we're already seeing that. Of course, there's also a huge shakeout that's happening because of too many ed techs probably jumping in, looking at this opportunity. But yes, it does have the potential to, disrupt. Today, everyone's in the money-making mode. But if people really think about it the way you have just stated it, it could probably disrupt the whole industry. Great. Any other questions? Anybody? You can unmute yourself. I'm allowing you to unmute yourself and ask a question if there's any further questions. All right, so I think that brings us to the end of this discussion. It was absolutely insightful, full of practical wisdom and a lot of great ideas and a lot of thinking as well. I mean, it creates a lot of thinking for us about what the future holds. Whether I'm a business owner of I'm an MSME, or I'm a large enterprise, or I'm an IT services company. Or I'm a startup that's just thinking about what I can do with all this technology at my hand to create and disrupt, the industry. A lot of thoughts in there for us. So thanks a ton, Manish, for your insights. Always, as always, very insightful and very witty and very, very clear and to the point. Thank you so much for your time and for your valuable insights.
Thank you, Siddharth. Thank you, Ramesh, for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining. It was a pleasure to have you on this call. We will be releasing the recording as well subsequently. Thank you so much.
Thank you.